Hello, I'm Charles Kovess, Australasia's passion provocateur. Welcome to this week's episode of the Charles Kovess Show, whether you're watching on Rumble or on YouTube or listening via one of the many podcast platforms. I'll discuss 2 or 3 current challenging issues or problems that arise locally and globally, and then share with you ways in which you might consider handling these problems using the principles of the self-awareness and passion quest. My goal is for you to elegantly and happily handle big issues in your life. I'll share whatever resources I think are relevant to handling such matters. The show notes give you links to the foundational principles of this show and details about my background, and they also contain links to our websites, kovess.com and charleskovess.com, where you can also find my books, my passion speeches, my team building programs, my leadership and strategic thinking courses, and also many free resources. So let's go with this week's big impact issues and how to handle them. Well, one of the great issues that arises from the Paris Olympics is understanding how to create great teams and how bad it is when you're in a bad team. I've been in many teams in my life, and I've been a leader of many teams. They are great when they're great. It's a spectacular experience being part of a great team. But golly gosh, if you've been in a bad team, when people are unhappy with each other, when they're behaving in shitty ways, it's bad. It's difficult to create great teams. And to give you one example, in the Olympics, the Australian Matildas, the soccer players, they bombed out at the earliest stage ever in their history. And now the stories are coming out about how bad Tony Gustafsson, the coach, has been over the last 4 years, according to some of the players, according to mainstream media. Well, the quality of their performance would suggest that. At the same time, the Olympics show us some excellent teams, and 2 of them from an Australian perspective are reputedly the Australian men's and women's water polo teams. 2 totally different teams, of course. You know, they've got 2 separate coaches, whole bunches of assistants, but both teams are getting rave reviews in terms of the quality of the relationships of the players and the coaches within the teams. The results are showing that would appear to be the case. So how do you create great teams? Well, there are 2 words that lie at the heart of all the teams that I have led, that I try to create, and that I've been a part of. And I've played some reasonably high-level sport, not international competition. And those 2 words are trust and caring. In great teams, the team members have a high degree of trust amongst each other, and they care about each other as human beings. That as a man, as a woman, you matter. They care about each other. Indeed, they love each other. And I've often said when I analyse premiership-winning teams, you know, the players come out public and say, I love my teammates. When you can create a team where the players love each other or care about each other and trust each other, magic happens. And this trust and caring happens at a deep spiritual level. You see, you can have all the mental and the physical elements of teams, but when you create this spiritual bond, it creates magic. This is a leadership issue. And the self-awareness relevance of this leadership issue is that there are many leadership models available. And the question for each one of us when we're in a leadership position is, how self-aware am I about who I am to then adopt the leadership model that I'm going to apply in a consistent way to this team? There are over 1,000 published models on leadership. This is how you lead. Well, which one do you choose? Well, you need to understand who you are. And then the passion part of this is, do you really want to be a leader? You see, there's an argument that leaders are born, not made. I reject it. I think there's too much evidence of people who are put into leadership positions who thrive despite not believing themselves to be great leaders. It's a very interesting exercise to look at how many great leaders in history were not natural leaders. So you then, as a leader, you have to adopt a set of leadership principles that you apply in a team that's relevant to who you are as a human being. Now, you might have a team, you might be losing teams, you might have to rebuild a team that's lost team members, you might be leading a team in business, in sport, or in a charity that is not a very happy place. And then you have to come and find, people might have left, you have to find new members to fill it. In a sporting team, you can have players who really don't want to be there. They've lost interest. They're there on past glory. It happens in many football competitions around the world where there's this weeding out of players. But if you pick the wrong team member, you can destroy a team. Pick the wrong team member, you won't be able to build a team. This skill of picking the right people to join the team is just such a crucial factor in your success as a leader and in the success of any team, and converting it from an also-ran team to a great team. Well, the starting point, I'll focus on work because it's come up in the context of some businesses that I'm consulting to, where the mantra in Australia is that it's hard to get good people. Well, in one sense, that's true, because many leaders are simply incompetent. They don't know properly how to lead. And so good people become ungood people or less than good people because of bad leadership. So if you're picking people, and in the workplace in Australia, for the workplace, there are large numbers of unemployed and underemployed people in Australia. It's well over 13%. The evidence shows that the best organisations pick people based primarily on their attitude, not on their skills. Now, in a sporting team, of course you focus on skills, but the skill level of many players can be high and the attitude becomes crucially important. Now, in a workplace, how do you pick whether someone's got a good attitude? You can't do it from the interview process. What I urge you to do is to understand this distinction between skill and attitude. You say, what's my base level skill that I need? Because it's easy to teach skill. It's hard to teach attitude. And so you then go, well, what would I look at on a resume to decide whether someone's got the right attitude? I want you to think about that. Look at what they have done. What's the evidence that shows the type of attitude that your team needs? Now, I'm going to tell you what those types of attitudes might be, but I want you to think about that and go, gosh, do I want a victim, or do I want a person who takes responsibility? Do I want a contributor, or do I want a slacker? Do I want a self-starter, or do I want someone who always wants directions? You then look at their resume, their CV, you see what evidence is there that they've got the type of attitude, not what they say that they're good at doing. What's the evidence? I rely on the wonderful Latin maxim used in legal circles, res ipsa loquitur. The facts speak for themselves. So when your mindset is to go, gosh, skill versus attitude comes first. By far the most important, because it's easier to teach skill. Attitude is formed over a lifetime. Now, you cannot look for good people where everyone else is looking for them. Oh, this coffee is so good. There are large numbers of people in Australia in many work environments who have stopped looking for work, particularly because they might be over 50. And there is certainly discrimination against people over 50. They're thought of as having, insufficient creativity, innovation, they're stuck in their ways. Well, I suggest that is BS. You can't make that overall judgment. you get people before you, but first they have to come and apply. You have to go and find them. And it requires some creative thinking to say, where would I find these people? And I'm happy to share insights. If you send me an email, I'm happy to share some insights into where you might look in unusual places for these people who have stopped looking for jobs because they have been knocked back so many times from getting a job. There are some wonderful human beings who, in the right environment, will flourish beautifully. The key in the context of the self-awareness and passion quest is to be willing to think differently. Think differently about the focus on attitude, not skill. Think differently about where you are going to find these people. And this question of thinking like everybody else, that's very, it's very tribal. It's very comfortable. It's not how you become successful. You do not stick out from the crowd by behaving like everybody else. Do not follow mob thinking. The next key element in great teams, and the Olympics shows this, is don't talk bullshit. The more bullshit you talk, the less trust there is, the less caring there is. And, the opening ceremony of the Paris Olympics rightly deserves huge criticism for its outrageous attacks on Christian culture, on Christian spirituality, on Christian principles, and it's put forward as how wonderful it is to honor diversity. That's bullshit. Similarly, don't put male boxers into a ring with females and then say, oh, we're honoring diversity. That's bullshit. And the Olympics gives us the evidence. Do not stand silently and accept bullshit being talked. Now, you might then say, well, I might lose my job. Well, that's what needs to happen. That's what might need to happen. I have coached people in the journey where I've encouraged them to stand up and push back against BS. And when you understand this crucial element between BS and trust and caring, you then start to go, why would you want to be a leader of a team where it's not safe to speak the truth? Business is hard enough as it is. I speak to you the truth as I know it. I don't share anything with you that I don't believe is going to be successful for you. And when you look at the failures of the Paris Olympics, of teams, but also of the organising committee, it's a salutary reminder to us to stand up for what we believe is true, that there are men, that there are women, there are a tiny number of people who might have gender dysphoria, but the game plan that's happening at a global level is to have us all think that this whole idea of men and women is a ridiculous idea. I call bullshit. So we have on our hands, and the opening ceremony shows that we have a spiritual battle going on in the world as well. And if you're not aware of that spiritual battle, not just an economic battle, not just a poor versus rich battle, we have a spiritual battle going on. And the inability for people to speak the truth really is a deeply spiritual problem. It means we don't call out evil compared to good. There's quite a distinction, and most people know the distinction between good and evil. And if we don't speak up against evil, it will flourish. Now, my guest on TNT Radio on the Mind Medicine program this week is Mark Worthington, who has just published his third book called From Pain to Possibility. I'm interviewing him to discuss that book. It's about a deeply spiritual journey, about the work that can be done to raise your level of spirituality. And the more spirit you have in you, the more passionate you are. And passion is the source of your courage. And we need courage at a spiritual level, that's where it comes from, to speak up against bullshit. So, Mark Worthington, the beauty of TNT Radio is that you can always watch a replay of it. And the resource that I want to share with you is my second book, Passionate Performance. If you'd like a copy, send me an email. in that book, I go deeply into these principles of applying the strategies for building world-class teams, and and why I come to the conclusion that trust and caring are so crucially relevant. Create that, you will have a great team. So I hope today's show makes a beneficial difference to your life and helps you to live life on your terms to make it as great a life as you are capable of making it. If you're new to the show, check the foundational principles of the show and details about my background, and have a look at our 2 websites. Go deeply into the details of the self-awareness and passion quest, because your own self-awareness of who you are and what you're truly passionate about are the keys to your success. And success is the progressive realization of your worthy ideal. When you wake up every day clear on what your worthy ideal is, you live life in a whole new way. Again, thanks for watching or listening. Have a great week. May it be full of passion, of embracing the challenges that come before you, of ever increasing self-awareness, and a willingness to embrace the challenges that face each of us. Your attitude to facing those challenges makes a massive difference in your ability to thrive whilst handling them. Have a great week. See you next week. Bye.